Great. I know that, Hawk, I think you wanted to start off with some story time wisdom,
Oh
huh?
gosh. Yeah. Okay. So when I was gearing up to do this, I decided to garden for a minute. Um, and I was beheading dandelions and because they're virulent in my yard, like absolutely covered. And my theory is that if I behead enough of them, the population will be kept at like a dull roar. And if I don't, they will take over very quickly. Um, so in beheading them, I'm also like a big softie and like an animist. So I was like, hey guys, sorry, I have to behead a bunch of you. Um, and like was kind of asking the spirit of the land that I live on, like, what do you think? Like, what is the balanced way to do this? Balancing my personal needs with like the needs of the environment, etc. And they were like, all right, you gotta like, you can keep three. You can keep three yellow golden heads for every dandelion. Um, so I did that. And then my brain was like, well, what if it was like four? And it was like, no, I said three. And I was like, oh, okay, three is a Saturn number. That's interesting. So I started like listening for the omen. And as I was like locking in on this, it like started to rain. And I was looking down at them and realizing that the bright yellow heads that had drawn my attention as the source of the seed bomb, that actually isn't the phase of the dandelion that causes that virulent spread. There's a second phase, like that where the dandelion head closes up for a second time. And I had always thought those closed ones were about to open into the yellow phase, but no, the closing happens just before they become this like massive gray bomb that like creates the virulent spread of the dandelion. And yeah, just like realizing that it was not the brash, young, visible one who is like the actual problem, I feel like just like drew this really hardcore parallel in my spirit to Saturn and Aries. Um, because as like a member of like multiple communities, it's just like always challenging to figure out like, like in the political world, like in any like scene that requires a group, it's always there's these voices that are like super loud, and as people who cherish things and care about each other, like we want to protect our communities. And it's scary to like think of like horrible ideas or like bad actors or whatever like influencing like other people. And when we're thinking about who to turn the scythe to, it was kind of like the message that I was just getting was don't worry about the young ones, like worry about the people who have like grown old in this codification of this way of being, and like those are actually like the targets. And I thought that was like a really interesting message about how to garden with dandelion and also how to like let people fucking live in a good way while actually like keeping our focus as communities on the people who actually have power, because like the young new dandelion heads, they don't have the power to change things, and it's like the old structures that are like bent over and have like lost that brightness and that brashness that are usually the people who hold the power, and we might not even see them. Uh, so that's my opening omen. um, Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's when you brought that up, it kind of blew my mind immediately because it tied into some of the initial things that we had been speaking about that actually led to us wanting to do this, right? About like things on a more global, mundane level, collectivism. What is it going to look like to have a bunch of people individuating while trying to join like mutual aid and support at a ground level? But it also is like so indicative, I think, of the way you see and experience the world and the cosmos. Um, in particular, I think that the sort of big omen augur perceiving and viewing, where you're experiencing the transits as a really full body and like wide macroscopic understanding of how these things are happening uh, literally all around too. And it's really easy for us to start going into the mind, into a cerebral landscape, when these sort of messages and the communication of the transit and the dance of planetary figures is something that is perhaps most usefully acknowledged in these really like mundane, kind of almost innocuous ways, the ways that we would often overlook as a result of trying to find something more spectacular or news grabbing too.
Totally.
I was distracted because my microphone fell apart on me partway through that, but that the parts I heard, Sasha, were really beautiful. When Hawk first like told us that story, I also was blown away but I also wasn't, because it's extremely Hawk. Like the idea of being like, we were talking about what we might discuss, and we're getting a couple of comments that the volume settings
Volume is
are
low.
pretty low. Um,
I actually can't turn this up, but what we could do is maybe
Closer.
we could turn, if Meg's the right volume, we could turn Meg down, and then
Yeah, I
you
can turn
guys
me
could
down.
turn your volume up. Does
Let me
that
see
make
about
sense?
that.
Or are people who are asking for low volume, are we capping out your volume settings and thus you actually can't turn us up? Or is it that we're just at different levels relative to each other?
What if I shout the whole time?
I just like this little. Meg is the only one who's sufficiently loud.
I can turn mine down, but it sounds like I don't know. I'm not sure what would be best.
I don't even know where the microphone is on my computer. That's the kind of Luddite that I am.
This is somehow also Saturn and Aries. There's like one voice that's actually the correct number, and we're like, what if we turned you down to like.
Okay, some people are saying it's fine. We'll just roll with
It just means that I have to like hold the mic, which is like hella annoying.
Okay, Gabe.
I'm actually not a Leo rising, but that's okay. I
Rude.
appreciate the reflection.
Okay.
Shout out to cigarettes.
Is there a shout out to cigarettes in the
I just like
chat?
kind of read it too fast. I don't think that's exactly what it says, but
You know what? I think we're doing great.
This is just it. This is just what it's gonna be.
we were
This is-
designed to be witches in bogs, not.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
My L, yeah, I have a fucking L10 Virgo. Like my L10 is Mercury and Capricorn, so this is why I've been cursed to be in charge of the technical element of this.
Well, thanks for all the
can slip
support
into my
in the
glasses,
chat,
but that's
friends. That's really nice. Oh no. That's a solution, I suppose.
Everyone
Okay.
that came thinking they were going to get a really together, linear, well constructed. This is, yeah, Saturn and Aries. We tried to build a thing and we're burning it down before we even get anywhere useful with it. I think I will try. Wait, is Hawk muted?
No,
I don't think so.
I hear yogurt.
Okay.
I'm eating a yogurt.
Okay. 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 I'm gonna grab the
Do it.
steer by the horns.
Yeah.
And I think it'd be useful. I mean, we have a bunch of questions from subscribers that were fielded to us. I think that's a really good point of entry. We also have our own lists that we created that are points that we want to address. We have probably way too much for even the time that we have, which is a
Oh,
good
we
and exciting
definitely do.
problem to have. But I think one of the first questions that came through was talking about what the landscape of Saturn and Aries could feel or be experienced like. Does that seem like a place we might want to start? And are there people with really strong opinions to begin with that want to kick that off?
I have our notes up and I love your description, but I just want to say I think like the joke that this is one is a good landscape. Like the trying to do something, it's not just like failing to do something while trying to seem, we didn't come on here hoping to seem like the most masterful. We knew this was going to be casual. We knew this was going to be a couple of friends hanging out and talking, and hopefully people would like it. But we don't have like slides and shit like that. But I do think that like we would have preferred for the tech to be a little bit smoother, and
Yeah.
for like, but I think that it's not just the humbling experience of having things not go right and not getting to like Saturn well. It's also the fact that you have to figure out when it's good enough, and like
Totally.
deciding to like push forward when things are really medium to bad, and you're going to figure it out, you know, because it's, you just have to. And I think that there's also something here about having to adjust and pivot and find something else, because things are just changing way too rapidly for us to like hold on to a cement structure. Like spending time perfecting the thing is actually not that useful, because by the time you perfect, even if you get to perfection, all the circumstances are going to have changed anyway. And so
Totally.
like this is something, it's not just like, oh, this isn't going the way I had hoped. It's like, okay, but let's move quickly based on what is true right now. Um, versus like the other side of the zodiac, where we'd be like, how is everyone doing? Does everyone have what they need? Is it, you know, like that Libra attempt to harmonize everything and being like, yeah, it's messy, let's just go.
Yeah.
And so
Totally.
that's not a landscape, but it is, it's like where we are right now, and I feel like this is really apropos.
I love that. I just imagined like a really fast horse running and like how you would have to stay on that thing. And it's not
Mm-hmm.
by like locking up, you know?
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
how like if you get into some kind of like um car accident, it's actually like better if your body doesn't tense up.
Yes,
Not
that's why
recommend.
drunk people in car crashes don't get as fucked up physically. There's like been studies about this. I'm sure that's what
Yeah,
you're referencing.
yeah, not a recommendation necessarily, but an example.
What did you walk away with from the Saturn and Aries live? Well, if you're drunk when you are in a car accident, I think there's like,
Remediation.
and there's, to be so real, there's never in my life been a time where ice skating has come to mind for this, but I think it's because I watched a recent documentary series on Netflix about like the ice dancing scandals or whatever. But one of the things that really struck out to me was the athleticism of Mars, the discipline and the rigor of Saturn, as like the attempts to build a practice and perfect a thing or a practice. And then when both of those are coexisting but collide in inoperative or dysfunctional ways, like if someone has practiced their whole life for this Olympic moment and they get to that place where they have the platform of the expert, they've put in the time, the work, the effort, they've trained their body, the blood, the sweat, the tears, and then they still like biff it on the ice, they fall mid triple axle, right? That's the thing.
Sure.
That's is that
Yeah.
Very
skateboarding? I don't
real.
know. Okay, it's one of the I also don't know anything. I don't know, this is the metaphor I'm leading with, even though I am not someone who should be talking about anything that has to do with coordination whatsoever. But the need to get back up and immediately, right, like as if you hadn't fallen, without skipping a beat, be able to pick up and continue forward. There is that sort of, not just like a fake it till you make it, which I think is very Aries, right, this primordial Luciferian spark. It's the idea that is immediately similar to that horse metaphor, the idea of that like the horse is born like basically already standing up and starts running immediately as well. I think there's something to Saturn in Aries about that too. Like whether or not you're ready, you better start running. You better start doing. If you fuck up and fall, oh well, like you have to get up and you have to keep going. The consequence of lingering is that you end up in this place of like becoming trampled by all the avalanching circumstance, right? It's the stampede, oh god, in the Lion King, right?
Woof.
You have to keep,
No.
oh no, what have I done? What have I done?
My
Um,
childhood trauma.
no. Oh my god, I made a terrible mistake. But I think about that scene, it's like through the, whether it's embarrassment or humiliation or whether it's between like grief or loss, you can't really skip the beat. You have to pick yourself up. You have to keep going. You have to keep moving. And sometimes that means learning to do the thing while you're already doing it.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. I think a lot of times we talk about Saturn, and like one of the things we say is that he's like slow and sluggish, and that's just not really an option in Aries.
Yeah.
Like you may feel that way because you can get stuck on the ground and trampled, but like it's not rewarded to go
Yeah.
slow in this case. And I know there's like a lot of conversation about like we don't want to give in to too much urgency. There's a value in going slow even when things feel dire. But I think at least when it comes to Saturn and Aries, there's this feeling of um if you're going to master something in Aries, one of them might be getting back up.
Yep.
Like
Yeah.
how to do that. Like by the time Saturn leaves, how good are you at getting back up versus Saturn trying to be good at not falling in the first place?
100%. Like not moving till you're ready is the other
Mm-hmm.
Saturn thing. I
Mm-hmm.
do think there's like you're acknowledging this like greater social kind of thread of being like we don't want to move too fast, like to like kind of relinquish the urgency culture. And I think it's like actually like Saturn and Aries is like actually then just do less. Like I think that's the actual solution is to if you want to do everything perfectly, that's not available to you. And if you want to at least do things like kind of in line with the Tao or whatever, like the answer is to drop some plates and to do like Saturn Aries is single pointed, right? Like it's like one thing instead of like working on the whole system at once, I think. So I was thinking about that again while doing the dandelion thing. Is I was just like, wow, I don't think I could do this level of attunement with like a bunch of plants. And it's like because I don't have the skill yet or the capacity. Like I can barely manage the dandelion with that level of attunement. And instead of being like, well, I'll sacrifice my attunement and do more, the answer is just like, cool, you only get to deadhead dandelions. That's like the only thing you get to do in the yard right now. And like making choices and sacrifices like that.
It's rough too because it's like how do you make the choice about which plates to drop and which ones to keep spinning too, right? That's a question that's way easier to explore in retrospect or in hindsight. It's a really different one when you're trying to make it in the moment. I know that I'm like a 50 plate spinning and like thrown up in the air and like driving myself crazy trying to catch them all on an average day. Being asked to, which is a thing that I get in my own like consults from my elder all the time. My spirits are always like, learn how to edit, right? Like, choose
Mm.
where you're going to put your energy, where you're going to focus it. You can't do a million things great. You can maybe do two or three, like, pretty good, you know? And the more you add on to that, the less the return becomes too, right? And I think the discernment, being forced to decide which ones of the multitude of options of the many roads you can walk down, of the opportunities that avail themselves to you. It's that nine of cups style, like, oh, there's too much of a wish coming true, too much of a good thing is actually like a step into a temptation to lose your head.
I often talk to clients, especially in like fifth house reading type stuff, about Gemini being a place where like the roads just keep forking and the pain of having to choose one, and like all the ones that die when you decide to follow something. Even if you can go back again, you're going to be a different person. The opportunities might be different. But listening to you both talk, I'm like, oh, this is also a Saturn and Aries thing. Like Saturn with the scythe coming through and being, and the single point of Aries, that like desire to like move forward at a certain clip. You cannot do 17 things at once, you know. And I think Saturn is so invested in like what is actually possible, not what do we wish was possible, not what are we afraid might happen, but like what is happening right now, and what is like real and true about this moment. And that can only be so many things, especially with, you know, so that Aries Saturn combo feels like um part of, if Aries is like that action oriented, then part of what Saturn as like a death guy is killing is like all the other options, so you can actually do something. um so
I
that's like
really
what's coming up for me around
I
that.
really like that, and I like the bravery element that you brought in. That there's like a bravery endemic to being like, actually, I don't have eyes on the whole thing,
Mm-hmm.
and like
Mm-hmm.
choice is terrifying. It's because it is like
Oh yeah.
death.
Mm-hmm. It's like the D side has the same
Yes,
suffix as all the other sides that are about killing things. Yeah.
exactly.
I think too, a piece of like wisdom or advice that I continually come back to that's like emerged over and over again for me as a person who doesn't have uh, Saturn in Aries but does have Mars in Aries, is this idea that being intentional in the sacrifices you're making is one of the ways to work with a transit, right? Especially in Aries one. Like if you know that something has to die, if you are deliberate and intentional about what you are stewarding or midwifing through that death, you're going to feel way different in the process of those transitions than you are if you are like refusing to acknowledge that this is an inevitability and that decision is essentially being made for you by the planets, right? And I think that it would be presumptuous to assume that we have any kind of control ultimately over those outcomes. But I do think that when you're working in relationship with something as opposed to willfully kind of rejecting it, like I often tell myself that if I just don't do my taxes, I'm not going to have to do my taxes until it's like the very last minute and I'm freaked out and I am like up, till midnight trying to get them done, right? As opposed to recognizing that this is inevitably a sort of suffering that has to be done. And if you are a person who does freelance or owns your own business and does taxes, you know how deeply and truly this can suck. But the alternative is feeling a sense of total powerlessness over your life and like you are victim to the circumstances around you, as opposed to acknowledging and recognizing that you have to work in conjunction or complement or at least like supplement the overtures of the universe.
Supplement the overtures of the universe is like a great sentence.
Thank you.
Thinking about taxes and that the phrase that like came into my mind while you were describing that, Sasha, is like, when is suffering going to make me feel more agency rich?
The suffering that ends suffering.
Yeah, it's like doing this thing I really don't want to do that feels like the worst thing. Like I want to put off and I want to put off and like just seems so insurmountable. And but like not doing it, I'm suffering. Doing it, I'm suffering. So it's like the suffering level is not actually the decision maker. It's what's going to make me feel like I got like some of the Aries stuff. Like I got to have movement.
Yeah, and how do we not valorize like unnecessary suffering, like choosing additional avenues of pain and suffering while recognizing the sort of sacred nature of suffering too. That
Mm-hmm.
balance is a really fucking tough one.
Well, it's like the
Mm-hmm.
point is to. I think it's like what's the point of the suffering? It's like the point is like the suffering is like we're suffering to move towards joy or to like gain some kind of like. At least that's my theory. I think is that I'm like the suffering I consent to and opt into is like the kind of suffering and move towards is the kind of suffering that will make it more aligned or more joy rich in the future. Like ending a bad relationship is like an obvious fucking like example of this,
Yeah.
where it's like a horrendous period of acute suffering that is like actually for the best and like seeds the soil for like the next thing.
Yeah, whereas Saturn and Aries, the landscape of like doing the walk across the hot coals because you know the only way you can get to the cooling river that's going to offer you succor is like on the other side of those. There's nowhere you can go back. You can't go around it. You have to go across it. It's inevitable. Or where is it the fact that like if you have a wound and you don't cauterize it, will an infection spread? Is the consequence of not doing the painful thing actually going to be much more insidious and worse than the consequence of doing the thing that sucks? Usually
Exactly,
the answer is yes.
and you may as well like eroticize or create some kind of like beautiful narrative or like way of being around these pieces of like pain that you have to do. And like that's like wound cauterization is a great example, right? Because it's like you could have some kind of like martial sacrifice of the flesh that is like built into a thing that is of benefit for you, the wound cauterization. But if it was just burning yourself, like that might be different. Obviously there's versions of just burning yourself that if you ritualize them enough like become their own form of transformation. I mean, there's like you could have like ritual branding, etc., etc. This is like not a novel concept, but yeah, I think it's like when the bad thing is actually worse, like when the bad thing is actually better than the thing that's easy right now.
Think a lot about desire and Aries, like having a pull, like an internal pull towards something. I think a lot about people with like planets in Aries, and it depends obviously on the planet, but there being like a pretty short distance between like I want and I'm taking action on that want. Whereas for some people, the distance is really, really big. And if Saturn is there, then maybe that distance lengthens some, and there's like this thing of I can imagine instead of like doing the coal walk, for example, and of course all I can think about is a coal walk in the office right now. But the perhaps this like a coal walk where you're like, I want to get to the other thing, but I'm afraid of the coal walk, so I'm just going to sit here. And when you're sitting there, you don't feel good. You don't feel like, oh, sitting here is it's saving me from the coal walk, but it's not saving me from like all the feelings I have about not actually getting to the other side of the thing that I want.
Right.
Or even the Saturnian satisfaction of like, I did the damn thing. I actually did it. But I agree that like we don't want to romanticize suffering. There's plenty of suffering that is not chosen, that is just here. And there's a way in which I think suffering can create a lot of empathy and connection with each other, but some of it's just bad. It's just terrible and useless and needless. And
So true.
I definitely don't want to make a mistake in talking about it's very easy, I think, with Saturn in particular to start to want to make that sound like it always has this great utility, and I don't think it always does.
100%. There's suffering, and then there's suffering that ends suffering.
Yeah, there's suffering and there's also punishment, right? Which I think is very much within the domain of Saturn. But it makes me think that I love this point you brought up about desire, and perhaps where Aries would be the lightning strike of that desire landing and being located in the body, and then the inherent kind of adrenaline to pursue the thing. On the other side, you have Saturn as like the very necessary bonds, boundaries, restrictions that allow for desire to exist within something, right? Like I think a lot, in particular, about the Camusian existential way of recognizing that you have freedom. Sure, and freedom is a word that I find inseparable from Aries, and actually like a fair amount of the stars that Aries gonna that Saturn is gonna make a conjunction with. But if you have this principle of freedom, freedom only makes sense within the context that there's something that is caging it in some way, right? Otherwise, freedom would have no inherent meaning or value. It would be implicit. So we know where we feel the edges of desire, where we need to push, where we need to pursue, where we need to break free, only because we have something that is actively pushing back or resisting against us. So then Saturn becomes the teacher of where that desire is. What mountains are you willing to move? If the outcome of that is you becoming closer, is you summiting and therefore achieving some sort of pinnacle of that desire. You can't have a road to even choose to walk down if there are not other avenues and paths and passages that are closed off to you.
While you were saying that, I successfully detangled my North Star like Polaris like guiding light necklace from a black and red set of beads, which
invoice landing in your Venmo in T minus minus 5 minutes.
It's just like very
magical support,
very like extremely what you just said, where it's just like it's like getting that that pathway to like what actually looks like increased freedom. I also really like the desire lightning bolt element of that because there's like so bigly a I don't know how that ironically got into my lexicon, but it's stuck. There's this, I'm just imagining like the version of the tower moment where that centers desire, where it's like you ever have that moment where you're just like, oh shit, I just know that now and I can't unknow it and now I have to change my life. And like I think it's that because obviously we find Saturn in his fall in Aries, which is like a technical condition that basically means the planet is opposed zodiacally to a place that it exalts. So it's the opposite land from where it is celebrated, rejoiced. So like the typical connotations of Saturn that you get, structure, stability, like these we find turned a little bit on its head, or sort of either inverted or paradoxically combined in a good way, sometimes even with its opposite. So you have both inversions and these paradoxical mixes of things that our culture insists are opposites. And I think that the destabilizing event that takes us, that is precipitated by the lightning flash of desire, where it is all very opt in that one way, but you can't like let it go once you see it, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, some people can, I guess, but they won't be very happy afterwards.
The
Desire is
Go ahead.
like the crushingness of Saturn, right? It's a consuming thing. It's a thing that sits on you and makes things immovable in the same way that it is a deeply Mars animating force, which has, I mean, at least if you look at psychoanalytic philosophers, right? The desire and drive are parallel lines. I mean, they never get to fully coalesce or cross over, but they get so close, and the incentive that they have for us is that on the other side of the pursuit of the suffering is ingress or congress, right? Is some sort of dissolution, some freedom from the human kind of mortal fleshy form, and I think that is like such a Saturn story in so many ways. Like, what does it mean to break free of the limitation, but also the suffering of form, to be closer in some way to what is beyond the firmament? Did that did that make sense?
Totally. My brain
Okay.
was just saying no context Sasha Ravage when you said breaking free of the fleshy form. I was just like it's just like it was just like so you that it like made my brain like buzz for a minute.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um
Yeah.
yeah, sorry.
No, you
What
can.
do you think, Meg?
I think all kinds of things. I keep getting this image listening to both of you talk of like a Mars. I know like we usually talk about the planet as the person and the zodiacal place as the
Yes.
landscape that they're
Yes.
in, but I'm
Flip
actually
this.
feeling the opposite right now, where I feel like the feeling of Mars running and keep getting stopped over and over again by Saturn, like some kind of obstacle, and how much that would tell you about what you want because it's so hard to get and you still want it, like constantly feeling like the
Ooh.
Saturnian no or limit or boundary, or like some of what you both were talking about, this like constriction, actually is teaching you what actually matters to you, because you're not being thwarted by the slowness or the limitation. You're like, wait, okay, but like that, I don't, for all the pivoting and nimbleness I was talking about before, I can see it going the other way too, where it's like, I refuse to give this up just because it's hard. And by continually coming up against something that's challenging, it's just showing me how bad I want this.
Totally. It's a
Um,
barometer.
yeah.
Crazy thought.
Mm-hmm.
Is Saturn in Aries edging? Uh, uh,
I like how we're all sincerely considering
Yeah.
it. Like you can't
yeah.
see us all at the
Uh,
same time, but all of us just look
uh,
up and to the left like
Saturn in Aries? Question mark? Question mark? Question mark? Edging? Question mark?
Yeah.
Question mark? Question mark?
I mean, I think I buy it. I mean,
yeah.
I think also like in the
There's not
same
a
way
lot
that
of
certain kinds of like bindings are a kind of edging also, like to hold yourself back is while being in an environment of go for it, go forward, but you're being held in some way.
is it like
Whether it's by
pre-jack?
yourself or by something else does also feel um yeah, I think that fits.
I think it feels kind of like an exciting, positive reframe of some of the stuff. Like, I love this point you're making about how obstacles can actually educate you to how deeply you want something and what you're willing to do for it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
when you don't just get it easily, when you can't just hit the mark, in what ways is that informing, deepening the desire? In what ways is that a log to the flame, right?
Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah, it's making me think about like how Saturn in is in fall in Aries, but Mars is exalted in Capricorn. And like what is the difference between when these two are combined in different ways? Because I think Saturn has a way harder time being in a Mars place than Mars does in a Saturn place. And we're talking a lot about like their significations together, but I do feel like there is a Mars almost gets like more directed in Capricorn, like held in a contained strategy. And I think for Saturn to be in Aries, it's kind of like there is the one who wants to be bound and do binding is being told to go forth at the same time, which I think is it's a different feeling.
Is there a top shortage thing in here somewhere? I just feel like there's like
Oh my God. We're getting into the important questions, I think,
we
actually.
really are.
Yeah.
Should we look at some other questions?
I saw there was also a comment, I think it was from Lucas,
I'm not looking.
about 3 like challenge these 3 astrologers not talking about desire possible or something, which
Yeah, there's
is
there's gotta be like a bingo card for us, I think.
yeah. Yeah. You know,
If someone wants to
there's
if
no
someone
place
wants
for
to
emphasis.
make that and drag us, feel free to do that.
that would be really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, the meme.
Can we talk about some more paradoxical combinations that are present in Saturn and Aries?
Sure.
Take us away.
I think we've hit fast and slow for
Mhm.
sure. Eldership and youth, I think, is another paradoxical combination. Do we have anything like that? Because there's in these fall and yeah. Does that bring anything up for anybody?
Oh, I have a bunch. I wrote
Hell
them
yeah.
down. Pride and humility,
Ooh.
brash heroics, and the cynical elder, which is similar to but doesn't have to be about youth and agedness. I think these are not necessarily opposites, but they also are, like the tyrant and the rebel. I think also we have talked about um this is, I don't know if this sort of fits what you're talking about, Hawk, but the feeling like torn between wanting to be anti-authority, fuck the man, and also not being willing to give up one's own authority, like not wanting to give up like the power and the safety and the security or even the superiority and like certainty
Yeah.
of authority.
Yes.
And like I think that they're both present in these two things, like this planet in this place put together, like we're forced to confront all of those things in ourselves and in other people.
Yes, and this is something that I feel like we've just been dealing with as like a culture in like the United States of America in particular, is that I feel like the like liberal reality kind of gained some momentum at a time, and in when I was a teen, right, we had like being left was like a actual like rebellion against the current order after during like post 9/11 America, and you get to be like from the position of the underdog, you get to have a certain kind of attitude, and you don't have to deal with having power and what you do with it once you get it. And this isn't exactly what I'm trying to say, but it's just like I feel like something happens when you're like the anti-authoritarian, like fuck you guy. That once people are like, yeah, you're right, fuck you, you're so right. That like then they're with you, and now you're the guy. Like that's just the thing that happens. Like
Yeah, it's counterculture stuff when it gets not counterculture anymore.
yeah, and then it's like, what do you do now that you're the guy? If you don't have like a replacement that's not just fuck that guy.
Oh, the commodification of culture is a really interesting one there, actually, right? Like the what happens when you can go to like when you can find some weird punk band shirts at like American Outfitters or something too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Totally.
Yeah, I think it's like the way that counterculture gets co-opted and consumed because it's like the Aries energy becomes like somehow like canonized or like made official and institutional by through capitalism. But I also think, Hawk, part of what you're talking about is not necessarily getting co-opted or mainstreamified, but even just and tell me if this isn't what you mean, but even just like being the fuck everybody or fuck those guys thing. And then if people agree with you, now you're some kind of leader.
Right.
But your
You have
whole
power now.
identity was based on being like, it's not power because you're aligned with the people you were saying fuck you to, maybe like the way that co-opting does. But it is like, oh, now I can't just have an ego identity based on being contrarian or separate or different or mad. I have to like actually build something else too, or at least
Yeah.
like negotiate what power looks like in my maybe very tiny little but still existing community, collective, whatever the fuck.
Yeah, you certainly have an option to at that
Mm-hmm.
moment. Like you can keep being the fuck you guy, but
Mm-hmm.
like then it's like a fizzling out. It's like the match burns, then like that's it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It also makes me think about that like generationally. Like I know that
Mm,
part when we
yes.
started talking about doing this in the first place, one of the conversations we were all having with a handful of other people too was like, oh shit, are we're not the youngest generation of astrologers right now.
Nope.
Are we teachers? Are we what's happening? Like when did we become the adults in the room? Like I think that there's like a
I
Saturn and
can give
Aries feeling of like who's in charge? And
yeah.
I don't remember being told I was a grown up. Like when did that happen? And there's
Yeah.
like, and by the way, no one else is coming is the other thing that I think is a very Saturn and Aries thing. Like if you're waiting for someone else to take charge, it's kind of like this is a little bit of a free for all.
Yeah, the thing that prompted that was I found a screenshot from 2018 of me asking Chris Brennan on the astrology podcast what um how he felt and how he and Austin and Kelly felt making that transition to being like in their 30s and realizing that they're not the youngest person at conferences and people who are like 10 years younger than them are like coming up to them and being like, I consumed this thing that you did and it influenced me as an astrologer. And then they all sat around and said exactly pretty much what Meg just said, being like, that was a really sudden and abrupt transition, actually. And like, uh, yeah, I don't know. I think it's interesting. Someone just said Saturn and Aries is grappling with the pitfalls of individualism, and that's definitely
Yeah.
something that we touched on. Also, I saw somebody just real quick say that they're kind of curious slash worried about how Saturn and Aries can impact significations for bottom surgery. And I just wanted to throw out there that I think exiled and fallen planets, especially that include Saturn, can like sometimes just have significations of like going against the grain and whatever. And like as trans people, like we're like in that position anyway. So like I think there's a lot of that when you're like doing a Mars type thing of like using the blade, you know what I mean, to like create gender confirmation. It's like also there's like some evidence about Saturn being for the dolls and just trans in general. So that's out there.
I'm gonna throw kind of a really obvious opposition out there that I think is like one of the more traditional ones, but also becomes really interesting when we think about it in subtextual ways, is like hot and cold too,
Yes.
right? Saturn is a traditionally cold, dry, right? Mars is supposed to be hot and dry, I think also, right? That's
Yep.
the
Okay.
and so uh I mean both share a dryness, but hot and cold feel to me, not to be that person, and I can't actually believe I'm bringing this up too, but I think we start getting into some weird and interesting things about like climate change as well during this period of time, conversations about like extremes in temperature and weather, and even thinking about how weird things have been in New York where we've had like unprecedented blizzards, or like it's been much colder this year and has continued to be colder and in like record levels of cold. But then we also had around the time of the Ingress, actually, we had like a weird spike where it got hot and then it got really cold again too.
Mhm. Mhm.
Hmm.
Well, I think about how that feels like a fever also. Like that
Totally.
hot cold feeling is not just like a
Yeah.
weather experience, but it's also like the feeling of desire, disappointment, like the feeling like the shuddering through the body, whether it's from illness or like an emotional experience that feels like an illness. There is like that the rapid changes. I think people often talk about anything that has to do with Mars and Saturn at all, whether it's their signs or the two planets together or whatever, as like this is so cliche, but like one foot on the gas and one foot on the brake at the same time, or like the whiplash feeling. And I think that that works on a temperature level too, in terms of like an embodied experience.
And then also, this brings in that freaking omen that I got while I was thinking about this call, where there was a little red Saturn, like the car brand Saturn, which is now discontinued, zipping along the highway, like passing me while I was thinking about this. And I feel like that thing where it's like, actually, it is just going like out of control fast and it's going out of control slow at different times. And it's like a lack of like cyclicality, because like Saturn is the cycle of time that like keeps everything in alignment and when it's in its right way. And I think when we see that going out, it's like you start getting, whoa, like there just was no winter this time, and like that's the part where that's supposed to go. Or that's like, that was my experience here on the West Coast. And yeah, so I think you get that too. If you get it both like foot on the gas, foot on the brake, and you get just like, whoa, all gas suddenly, it's just like the absence of balance, as it's the opposite of Libra.
Well, and that also tracks with like needing to pivot and keep getting up after falling down, like literally like he's in fall. But because
Fall.
of the uh that like you cannot find the right speed for something. You can't necessarily make the perfect plan. Even if you like, I think that feeling of like too much is changing all the time, including the rhythm of what's happening for you to bet on stability. So how do you build, which is something that Saturn I think is really invested in, like how do you make something that lasts in an environment that is, shifting and on fire? And I think that's one of the tasks before us.
Do you think, I feel like there is also something specific. Whoa, I had the thought and
Did it do it? Did it just
it just it just
Goodbye.
disappeared. Like it was right there, and I'm gonna
We'll
reassure
miss
you it
you.
was a really good one too. Okay, someone else go, and then I might interrupt you when
Yeah, I
it
was gonna
comes
say if it
back.
comes back, you have my permission to interrupt me.
Okay, great,
Yeah, same.
perfect.
I'm
Um
just still thinking about the old beater car covered in dirt that was a red Saturn. And a red Saturn. It was just like so
Oh,
silly.
I remembered.
oh
Okay,
great.
Perfect.
there's something here too about Saturn being so traditionally tied to death endings, right? Uh, Linking up with the zodiacal sign that we associate with the spring equinox and the start of spring, right? The idea of life returning, being kind of governed or occupied by the termination of things as
Ooh.
well. So there's this inextricable life, death, birth, rebirth cycle too. That goes back to what Hawk was saying about cyclicality. And the non-linearity of these things, so that for all the ways we might become sort of preoccupied with like the old world is dying, there is a new world being reborn. Whether or not we like the world that's being reborn, we have some say in how we navigate or move through that. But it would be like foolish to pretend that this is not going to be a time of both pretty like radical and transformative endings and radical and transformative beginnings that are concurrent with each other. And I think the onus is sort of on us to be making the deliberate choice to focus on areas of birth growth where we can get in on the kind of ground floor and infuse and imbue our own unique ways of supporting those missions and endeavors, instead of becoming I mean, we have to pay attention to the immense amount of destruction and death around us, but
Oh,
how is
totally.
that also a fertilizer that is going to somehow nourish too, through the composting of grief, loss, ending, whatever is being midwifed as a result of that? How is it actually feeding in the beginnings that are there if we have the eyes to see?
So glad you remembered that. You weren't lying. That was a good
Yeah,
thought.
it was good. I love that
Thank
focus
you.
on being like, what the fuck can I do?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's like the point of the individual, I think, is as a locus of perception. And like I as an individual can court vision and desire and like understand like what I as an individual point am uniquely positioned, like what lever am I uniquely positioned to turn, like what connections do I have that I can bring together into the same room to create like a new idea that might be useful. Like, do I have 3 friends in my phone who might want to like do like a cool project that like benefits humanity even a small amount in like a small corner? And I think that's like a useful design question as it relates to the individuality of Aries in a how can we support the structure. And I think we have to be satisfied with it not providing the ego boost of feeling like we're doing a really good thing. Like, I think that's just something that we don't necessarily get with Saturn in Aries. And like, we just need to go in with our eyes open. We're being supported right now with Jupiter in Cancer. We're still getting that ideological, like, idealism that's like, oh, it's really good. I'm like, really, it's like everything is like feeling pretty okay. Like, in some regions, we're still getting that support. And it's just going to get almost, but there's this like intrinsic conflict between these two signs, right? Where it's like, actually, but it's just kind of fucked though. Like, there's some fucked up things about the world. Like, where's this optimism even coming from? And I think as Jupiter moves into Leo and we get that trine between the two of them, it'll like, we'll lose some of that feel good energy, and it'll be more about just like, damn, let's lock in. Like, we have to like lock in to do something right now. And that thing might just be like, but we don't get the butt pats for being like, you did so good. Like, you know what I mean? I don't get to feel like, oh wow, I'm really changing the world with this. It's like maybe I'm just like fucking boarding up my neighbor's house illegally because people keep stealing shit from it,
Yeah.
and it's abandoned. You know what I mean? It's a true story.
Hawk, you were talking about debility, and the ways that I don't remember if this was something that you said right now on this live event or something in our chats, but I remember you talking about or maybe it was actually a question that came through about finding sort of like
the good part.
the good part of the hard thing. Like, how does this turn into like if we think of it from like a narrative perspective, like how does this turn into a difficulty that becomes a strength of some kind, because oftentimes things that we struggle with do become strengths at some point.
I have
And
a
I
good one
went
for this. Yeah.
well, and listening to you talk, I was thinking about no, I had the same thought problem. So if you have something, it'll come back to me.
Oh
Go for
shit.
it.
I just
Okay,
have at
we're
the
doing
top of my notes, change doesn't happen without friction. And I think that that's just a major feature of Saturn and Aries. Everybody wants systemic change at this point. I think at least anybody on this call, like, we're probably in an echo chamber to a degree. And I think to get that, there's just going to be some ouchies, and friction can be a beneficial fire starter. And
Well, yeah, and
one,
nope. Oh, I was just going
you
to say
go.
that Aries also is so much about instant gratification, and Saturn is so much about delayed gratification too, right? That friction
Oh, it
starts to
is
get.
edging.
Yeah, that's what
Because
I'm
it's
saying.
the
That's
instantly
what I'm
gratifying
saying.
delay. I get it. I'm here now.
well, this is actually I remembered my thing, and it's really close to this actually.
It's
it's all
really
coming
close to
together,
edging.
guys. It's really close to edging. Is that I think that like when people talk about Saturn in Libra, for example, they talk about like because he's exalted there, like part of it is like, oh, wouldn't you want Saturn to have like the wherewithal of Libra, like apply structure and mastery to like harmony and the Venusian and aesthetics and community and connection, and like that's what you want to make last. That's the thing that you want to be Saturnian. That's beautiful. But I feel like Saturn in Aries, like the thing that's hard for Saturn that becomes like potentially like a super skill is like, what if individualism didn't suck? Like, what's the part that's
Yes.
salvageable? What's
Yeah.
the part that like doesn't feel like shitty American nonsense, but is
Is this where we
actually
talk about
like,
Hercules?
oh God. Um,
No.
I don't know,
No,
maybe.
finish your thing.
But I think it's like, what's the part of individualism that doesn't immediately feed the ego and is worthwhile, that feels like a satisfying, meaningful, but not actually like I'm the hero, which is a very Aries thing. I mean, I think it's a Leo thing too. more so even. But I think that there's like a is there a way that I can think of myself as someone individually contributing in a way that feels like it's not sexy, but I'm building brick by brick. Like I'm just adding my piece, and it can be um oh god, like kind of inspiring actually, even if it's not sexy at
I was literally
all.
about to say that, like,
Not like
inspiring
yeah, and
feels
it's
like a
not
keyword.
like what if Saturn was inspiring and had to do things in small bursts over time consistently?
This is a little bit of a pivot, but it feels really
Great
sparked by
pivot.
what you've said, which is that, like, I just feel like that whole thing where it's like the young people will save us, like that concept,
Oh, woof. Yeah.
like what if we had that in a good way where it's like the actual hope that there's like a change over the horizon that like is in the form of like newness that
Mm.
Mhm.
will represent systemic change, because actually what's the word I'm looking for, nihilism is like a opiate, you know what I mean, like the willingness to just be like nothing is going to get better is actually just like a thing that reassures me that I don't have to do anything that would be incredibly shitty, hard, or destabilizing.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I see people just like sleep in that noxious cave, and like, you know, I don't mean to throw my domiciled Saturn under the bus, but I think this is one of those things. And you know, just to give the Saturn and Aries generation and this transit something that I think is really a beautiful piece of it is that it's not going to do that. Like, it's definitely not laying down in its noxious cave of nihilism. It's like yelling about it. And I really, really appreciate that about Saturn and Aries, even when it's annoying me.
It's
Yeah,
like
there
the anti. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
no, you go ahead, Sasha.
I was just gonna say it's like the anti-Protestant work ethic, Saturn
Yeah.
and Aries, right? It's the anti, just like suck it up, no laughing, we just accept things are hard and it's gonna be hard, and the only thing is to kind of live in that hardness until you die, and then hopefully you're free of having to do the suffering, right? It is that sort of like, but wait, why am I suffering? What's the
Mhm.
point of the suffering? I understand, I accept that suffering is an inevitability, but but is this suffering an inevitability? Is this particular suffering worth it? Like, are we suffering by rote, or are we suffering because we believe in the fact that what this hardship is asking of us is going to be worth it, is going to be meaningful, and like that's a charged word, right? Like, where does meaning come from, and like how do magnets work, right? Like miracles. You thought you were going to get
Miracles.
through a single
Neptune
thing with
entered the
me
chat.
that doesn't have an insane clown posse
Yeah, if you could
reference, and
put
you were wrong.
whoever's working on that bingo card, if you could put the ICP square on
ICP
there, that would be
reference.
helpful.
Yeah, I am fundamentally me, but yeah, I think there is a. I feel like we are going to start to see people saying like, "Hey, what the fuck?" Because we went from 5 years of a really dignified Saturn, and I think, Saturn in Capricorn is different than Saturn in Aquarius and how it navigates those things, but then Saturn in Pisces is sort of like, how do I, it's edema and swelling in the body, it's waterlogged, it's like stagnant water, right? It's a place where it might even seem serene on the surface, but like disease is breeding beneath ground. And I think now we are entering this place, where people are finally like have that match strike of waking up and having to ask themselves, not to like, okay, another thing on the bingo card to bring in a musical theater reference, but there is like a Les Mis, and it's actually thinking it's really funny that there's in New York at Radio City Music Hall, there's going to be a big revival tour of Les Mis, the musical about the French Revolution, right?
I love Les Mis.
And this sort of sentiment of like, well, what am I willing to die for? It's not like what I'm willing to suffer for. It's like, what am I willing to die for? And I think that becomes a question that pivots, as opposed to what am I willing to suffer for, or what am I willing to accept as the inevitability of like suffering.
It's the Les Mis thing is really funny. I'm pretty sure there is some astrological overlap right now. Isn't there's like multiple things that link back to the French Revolution? right now too. It's not
Oh,
I don't know that it's a Saturn and Aries thing,
That's
but I
right.
remember it from Gina Cadlick's We've Been Here Before lecture, just to plug. But it like covers some of like the bigger outer transits plus the Saturn and Aries stuff. And I know for
oh, that's
sure
really
that there's like a
funny.
significant period on the French Revolution. I just don't remember
Oh,
which
hell yeah.
Yeah, I've heard
components
that
come
floating
together.
around. That's a great
Um,
title.
and I feel like Kira Reiberg also talked about the invention of the guillotine,
Oh yeah,
the guillotine.
Kira's been
Um,
on the guillotine.
and like it's been
I think it is a Saturn
like
and
the
Aries
because
thing.
it's like cutting the head, right? Like it's the scythe cutting the head off, like it's
Yeah,
but
totally.
anyway, for no particular reason. I was talking about that. And but Hawk, you were talking about was actually really about what both of you were saying. I'm thinking there was a question about like what are some how was this phrased? It was like something about Saturn and Aries. Oh, unique strengths of or gifts of Saturn and Aries natives.
Oh
And I
yeah,
was
that
thinking about like
was
the
Soul's
many Saturn
question.
and Aries people I've read for, and so often um they come to me like, I'm so bad at routine, I'm so bad at discipline, I'm so bad at having a structure and a schedule. If only I had one that like fit me, maybe I would, whatever the thing is. And so often we end up talking about how like they might have to come up with something new every day, like because it's like so responsive to the moment and what like where like the desires are. And I really think that there's something about like there's like a paradox with Saturn and Aries of that, again, like wanting the security of doing it the right way and also having this inherent contrarianism of like, why would I ever do it why this way of all the ways, and I think
Totally.
that there's like a pushback against what convention and what they've been told, but also like but I would probably feel more comfortable if I could fit it because it seems to work for other people or other times or whatever. And I think that the I've noticed a pattern of people either like trying to discipline themselves into oblivion in that like Protestant work ethic way, or having to be like, you know what, I'm going to have to figure out my own way. And that's way scarier on the one hand, because I don't have a model in front of me. I have to sort of
Totally.
like innovate and have no milestone or like rubric on which to check myself. Because if you follow a tradition, you can do that more or less. You can compare yourself to other people, and that has its own problems, but at least you have like some kind of guiding post.
Right.
And I think alternatively, you can either like invent it from scratch, or you can be doing it with other people who are inventing from scratch,
Mm.
or looking at more not at the top of the archive, the top of the historical canon, but deeper into like counter activism, counter like cultural movements. Till you have to go more off the main road in order to find things that
Yeah,
would actually suit you. Um,
totally.
because like the usual way isn't gonna you're not gonna like it and it's not gonna work.
Yeah, and
So
there are other people who have done that before, and
mm-hmm,
I feel like it's that thing of being like, okay, we have to like first of all stop beating ourselves up for not being the domiciled or exalted version of the planet. That's
mm-hmm.
always step one with a fallen or an exiled planet. And then the next step is being like, well, what does it look like to do it my way? Can we like talk about the no rules spirituality group that we are all sort of adjacent to, like no tradition, uh new springing up of a sort of a like basically we're all sort of like I know that each of us have connections to many different traditions, but like uh I think there's also this thing that's happening where there's like a theistic revival inside astrology and magic that's happening at the edges of astrology and like deity work,
Mm.
that we're all kind of adjacent to, and that doesn't have like as much of like an inherited rules based tradition. And I feel like at least my client practice is largely around mentoring people who are sort of like, I don't have a fucking mentor. Like this is like I just had to like learn this myself from scratch. Like where does that leave me? And the intrinsic disadvantages, but the freedom in not having that framework. Can we kind of like I just wanted to kind of kick this out here. It's specifically geared towards the spiritual scene that we all met in.
I mean, I think that's a really a good and interesting point that I had even thought about, and I think it's because I spent a lot of time thinking about certain numbers of individuals in the astrology world for whom feel deeply antagonizing toward um, different ways of seeing and doing, right? Like there are only very, very particular ways that are considered like acceptable, true astrologies. And I know for me, part of who I am as and I think, I again I'm not Saturn in Aries, but I'm someone with Saturn in the first house, and I am someone with Mars in Aries. And my only way of navigating that world was essentially being like, I don't see what I'm looking for. I guess I'm going to have to make it, right? Like, I'm going to have
Yeah.
to, like, not fucking pull it out of thin air or whatever, but I'm going to have to start creating systems of meaning making, interpretation, ways of seeing that are going to meet a fundamental need I have in myself that feels significant and important and needs to be met. And I think all three of us have done that in like respective ways, and have ways that we approach and offerings that we have that you can't necessarily like find other people offering. And I think we've experienced like such a great amount of connection and community actually around that, which was not what I would have anticipated. Because I think the kind
Aw.
of capital D disruptor types in that way are used to feeling like, oh, I don't fit into it. And I think Saturn and Aries is huge disruptor energy. And one of the main things that I end up, I think, talking about with my Saturn and Aries folks that I work with is like, how come I can't fit in anywhere? Like, how come I can't do community the way I've been told I have to do community? And I have to say over and over again, you're not encountering communities, you're encountering scenes. And there's a really
That's a
big
great way to phrase
difference.
that.
Yeah.
That's like
Because
such a fucking important distinction.
Yeah.
it is, and I think that we think, oh, if we have things in common, or we're doing the same thing, or we have the same sort of interests, that like that's a community, and we so deeply, deeply crave it, and we want it. And I think for so many people, it's so vital, it's so integral, and also, it is much harder and more deliberate, and it takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of fucking up, and then recovering in that fucking up. And I think Saturn in Aries is earnest for whatever its flaws are. It's earnest, and I think that
Yeah.
actually makes it a really amazing candidate for the discovery and the pioneering of communities. But I wouldn't be surprised, and this is a thing I kind of see consistently, if it's like, well, you're not gonna just join a community. Like, you're the kind of person a community begins to become cultivated around, right? Um, it is a Saturn and Aries is still two kind of places of leadership, of two things that like stand out in some way, and therefore you are going to have to be a lighthouse of some sort through which you attract and build community, as opposed to hoping that you're just going to like easily fit in. And I think, I work with a lot of like capital W witch people, and that wound around community and belonging and fitting in is so deep and so real. And over again, I have to be like, man, I wish it was like you walked up to a group of people you think are cool, that you have some shared interests in, and you do sort of similar work, and then you have each other's backs. But it is a community is a trial ground, right? It is a martial place. It needs to be a place where there can be conflict and subsequent resolution. There needs to be order. There needs to be some kind of system of rules, even if they're rules that just like everyone sort of agrees on, that like we don't fuck each other over this way. And a lot of loneliness, I think, would be prevented if people were able to have a little bit more clarity around like what a community is, and actually genuinely how rare it is, as opposed to the scenes that we see or clicks that get advertised, etc. I don't know if that makes sense, but it was
It
a little bit of a
makes
tangent.
so much sense. And I don't think it's a tangent. I think it's really relevant to this placement and has me thinking too many things. I wrote some of them down. But I think that there's so much to say about like the community thing and the loneliness. I think Saturn to me as just a planet feels lonely. Like it's a lonely place to be in Saturn's world a lot of the time. And Aries is so individuated and separate because like planets in Aries are really encouraged to go at like the speed that most matches Aries, which is hard to do with other people. You know, like I think probably why Saturn enjoys Libra more is because there's a lot of checking in and being like, we're all going to go at once, right? And how long does that take to make sure that everybody is like ready to go
like
to
figuring
brunch?
out a
You know, like
restaurant in a
it's
group. Totally.
oh my god, it's yes. Whenever I think about Libra, I'm like, okay, we're trying to plan a meal together. But I think that there is something really exciting about Saturn and Aries. If we're talking about like, yeah, it's malefic on malefic. Yeah, he's in fall. The world is, you don't have to look at the astrology to know the world is really, really, really scary and fucked right now. If we're looking at things that are exciting about this placement, though, I think, Sasha, you're describing a lot of them, which is like, and Hawk, you were talking too about like just getting like three friends together. I know there's a lot of talk right now about how like friendship is not the same as community, and that's definitely true. But if you don't have community, shoring up your friendships is not a bad idea ever.
Yep.
And it is a place
100%.
to practice different community skills, even if you can have more intimacy with friends than you, that is not required to be a good community member.
Yes.
So I don't know that we need to overemphasize the difference as hard as I think a lot. I understand the point. I understand the point that people are like, you can't build community if you have to be best friends with every single person in your community or even agree with them on any like a bunch of stuff. But
so true.
but I was thinking also about, and we can like put a pin in this piece if Hockey wanted to respond to that. But I was just thinking as you were talking, Sasha, about how planets in Cancer and Libra that we might be like really excited about being there, like Venus in Libra or the moon in Cancer or Jupiter in Cancer, are now like kind of screwed by having to constantly square Saturn.
Damn, that's so real, yeah.
And so like these two places that are really like relationship and feeling or relationship and harmony oriented are going to have to constantly be in tension with Saturn and Aries. And I don't think that's going to feel great. Like I think Venus in Libra is going to feel really square or opposed. I don't think that's going to like feel awesome. But I also think it could make us ultimately through malefic reasons like better and better at doing Aries stuff. You know, like that the Aries stuff that's also important for relationships, like repair and advocating for ourselves and advocating messily for other people and doing it in that kind of like, yeah, you're probably going to fall down while you do this and just get better at getting back up. And that sounds so cliche to say it again, but I just think that that's a big part. Like the fall in this sign is like no joke. Like it really is like falling.
Because Saturn is gravity.
Nice.
Bam. Bam. Yeah, I mean, and it's also, it's like, I think that the Aries stuff lets us do, right, the Libra stuff, because the opposite of that is enmeshment and codependency and the self-dissolving, or the hall of mirrors that we get lost within, and everything is about the other. There's obviously, it's like a spectrum. We want to be somewhere in the middle with the individual and the others as things that are interdependent. But I think that we vacillate so often from one to the other, trying to kind of overcorrect. And I think those squares are going to be really interesting points to kind of link up or almost form these sort of like fulcrum points, or hinges, where if we like look, the right way and out of the corner of our eye to not make it shy, we'll be able to see these little avenues or these apertures toward like attuning to the symphony, or like get to spy on Mars and Venus in their bedchamber, right? And partake of some of that wisdom as well.
Right. I love the way that you said that because Mars and Venus, all of their domiciles are opposed to each other, and that's their relationship. You know what I mean? And it's like a little slutty and a little sexy, actually. Yeah.
I just realized also we're at 82 minutes and we have answered like two of these questions.
Oops.
Wow. When I When I was talking
We're,
about
we're,
yappers,
we do it.
yeah.
Oh, the
Um,
other
okay.
that I was gonna say, the earnestness of Aries, I think earnestness is often thought of as like sweet. And like that is not what I think of when I think of Aries earnestness. I mean, it can be, but I think it's like it's just coming out the way it's coming out. Like this is what it is. I'm not like overthinking it. I'm not playing a game. I'm and then like the Libra side, I think is like the etiquette. Like I have thought through what the rules of being a person are, and I have decided that this is the most agreeable, cushioned way of expressing myself. This is like, I actually think that there's like a lot of strategy in Libra that doesn't get talked about all the time. And I think that there's something
Totally.
like really just, it's a bloody heart on your sleeve about Aries that is going to be, I think is interesting to pair with Saturn. But I just had that, when we were talking about the Libra and the Cancer stuff, that just came to my mind.
Well, I'm thinking about the earnestness in particular. Like I love my Aries people. It's one of my favorite signs, and it's and people that are heavy in Aries or people I kind of inherently gravitate toward because you always sort of know where you stand. They're just going to tell you, right? Um, there's something very like uh, direct and unmasked about Aries. But I think we can't really talk about Saturn and Aries without acknowledging that he's like linking up with the mask, right? Not the mask with a C, let me clarify. The mask
It's important.
with a K.
It's a link with a mask.
Yeah, Neptune is it makes everything a little bit more interesting in this situation as well.
Oh yeah, that's right. We were going to talk about Neptune because it's a little unavoidable for this transit.
And yet somehow we did kind of avoid it.
He loves that. He loves to just be like, you don't see me.
Yeah, he got exactly what he wanted. He was like almost to the 90 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like that's so weird because we have this like intrinsically dry thing going on with the, as you said, Sasha, with the natural conditions of both Saturn and Mars. And then you just have fucking Neptune, who's just there. Who's just like, what a tell. It's like literally the god of the sea. And I think that you get like, what's that about? Do you know what I mean? I've heard for Saturn and Aries, I have a lot of like systemic inflammation stuff, like keyed in my mind. And this is just a random thing that I've had on Neptune and Aries predictions, but I think like injectables, like peptides and stuff, is such like a Neptune, Saturn, Aries thing where it's like a literal liquid that like interfaces with the blood that's like targeting inflammation.
I have not
Well,
thought
it's a
about that
needle that
at
also goes
all.
into you with an injectable. That you're blowing my mind here.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, injectables in general, I just think it's kind of interesting because it's like there's this whole like gangbusters world of people like especially in LA and such like doing these like crazy peptides or whatever. Like, you know, GLP-1s are like just one of them, but there's a bunch. And I think the reason they're so big is because in a post-COVID world, post quote unquote, you have these like impacts on the body and the immune system that are just so inflammatory, and people are adjusting to this new normal that just and that is inflamed. And I think that is one of those Saturn Aries things, not necessarily in a natal chart way, but in a global way, where it's like people are adjusting to a new Saturnian norm that is being in joint pain suddenly despite like being like 28 or whatever. Do you know what I mean? And like that is like not that wasn't normal before, but we'll like lose touch with that because of how time works.
The from like
Sorry, I
a
just kind of curveball it with a bummer.
no, it's I
I have
can
big
read it.
thoughts about this too. So
Um,
yeah,
well, I'll keep mine tiny.
don't keep it
No,
I'm not
keep it
shrinking.
huge.
I'm not
Make
shrinking
it
it for you. I
massive.
just mean, well, it's not that big of a thought, guys. But
what if it was?
what if it was? Wow, it just totally. Let me see if I can find it. It ran away because we're
We
talking about
bullied it out
Neptune.
of your mind. Sorry.
No, really, like I think I got over supported is what happened. I think that oh,
I bet you can't do it.
I love you both so much. The thing I was gonna say is that with a Mars sign, you're usually thinking about with like from like a I don't do medical astrology for a bunch of reasons. That's a whole other conversation. But from like a general, I'm also an herbalist person and I do astrology perspective, like Aries has an acute pain association with it. It comes on fast. It's there. It shows up. And Saturn is chronic. So together
Yes.
there is this kind of like what happens when the acute pain becomes a chronic thing? What happens when like the acute condition is ongoing and is holding on in some capacity in a way we weren't necessarily anticipating? That's not a super happy omen, but it's something that comes to mind for me. It's like having inflammatory conditions be more like inflammation itself is supposed to be a short lived thing. It's supposed to do its job and stop. Um, and that's not what Saturn and Aries sounds like. So, yeah.
The thing that I was thinking about too, which is more on the Neptune angle, is the association of Aries with the face, and
Ooh.
the
Yep.
way that we are seeing on the point of injectables, cosmetic surgeries, filler in particular, or buccal fat removal surgeries, things that have once or have taken very like individual faces and slowly over time kind of remasked them in a very, I mean, deeply uncanny with a lot of the surgery way, right? But where you almost are feeling kind of like gaslit about the way a celebrity or a person has looked over time. And yet, a lot of these operations seem to be in service of making people look increasingly similar or have like very similar kind of features. And I'm
Ooh.
curious to see how, as this transit proceeds, and I think that, obviously in Neptune and with Saturn, oh sorry, in Pisces, and with Saturn in Pisces, there's the idea of like literal saline being injected into the flesh. But I'm curious to see how disfigurement plays into this and how the masks become further kind of disrupted as Saturn comes in and sheds a harsher light on things as well. I wonder
Feels
if
like
we'll start to see more reversals as to filler, if people will get like filler dissolved, for instance, or if there will be like a kind of sea change in what the standard of cosmetic procedures and the appearance and the look of Hollywood begins to take on as well.
it's funny that you said sea change with Neptune. Just want to say that. When you were describing it, and I don't have like a thing about aesthetic augmentation stuff. I don't have like strong judgments or anything, but I was making a face in case that did come on the screen. Just want to say, because as you were talking, Sasha, I had this image of just like faces melting because of, I think because of Neptune and like the Aries face stuff. There was just, and I was just like, oh, that's nightmarish. I don't know why that image is in my head, but there it is. Um, it was very like drippy.
Well,
I
and I'm
didn't care for it.
Drippy.
thinking about folks like Barry Keoghan. I'm thinking about folks like Zac Efron. But this the amount that of filler that is being used to, and I'm also thinking about things like look maxing, right?
Right,
Um,
like clavicular literally
yeah,
hitting himself in the face with a hammer, for
what
example.
what are
Like,
these ideals of quote unquote perfected masculinity, and like you're literally breaking the bones in your face to look more masculine, right? Like that's kind of confusing. You're
yeah, like
injecting,
Bones, Saturn.
yeah, you're smoking a
Aries break it.
small amount of meth every day to keep trim. There are things here that I think, I mean, we could probably do a whole fucking 90 minutes just on looking at the way this is showing up in like popular culture, which is one of my
Totally.
personal kind of fixations and obsessions, and as a reality TV truther, something I'm thinking about all the time. But like, as I like to say, I've got friends in low culture. But I will be curious to see how, I think we're gonna see like a widening of that particular scope of interference too, and how collective Neptune, like these kind of collective delusions of how the self looks, and the way people are trying to take things, and this actually dovetails into the technology question that we got fielded too. um, when the mirror that we're gazing into is like an Instagram filter that's showing us how we could look, and the fact that there's literally this point, right, in the really interesting critical theory that explores psychodynamically what happens to the mind as it experiences progressive cosmetic procedures where you start to forget how you look, you can't see the rest of your face. That for me really feels like Neptune in Aries.
Whoa.
You can't see the rest of your
Yeah,
face.
I've never heard
Yeah,
about this.
you
Can you say?
can't, you
Yeah,
only
this
start
is
focusing
fascinating.
on,
Tell me
yeah.
more.
So you only start, and this was actually something that I was in my craft class with Alyssa Bennett, we were talking about yesterday, that you start to be unable to see like the fullness of your face as an animated thing moving in the world, and you instead become hyperfixated on like one feature that is that looks wrong. And of course, things start to look increasingly wrong because as you correct one thing, another thing is going to start to look imbalanced or out of place, and so on and so forth. And that just feels to me to be that. I mean, you do the right amount of cosmetic procedures, right? I remember when like Lindsay Lohan got her stuff done, right? And everyone was like, "Holy shit, she looks incredible! Like, what the fuck has happened?" There's a way that this can be timed or scaled so that Neptune is like doing you a glamour, right? Is like
Yeah.
doing you a favor. And then there's the other side of it where when you start to lose touch with the scope, I think. And I again say this without judgment. I'm like a person who will never get a procedure done, not because I don't want one. I do. I want many, but because I know I cannot be trusted.
Yeah, I'm
I
like wildly
cannot be
pro plastic
trusted.
surgery actually.
Yeah, like you will
Yeah.
not recognize me in a here,
I'm
right?
just like do whatever you want so hard about like most things that involve body autonomy that I feel like it just spreads to that, and I feel like most people that I talk to are actually pretty firmly in that camp, including y'all, I bet.
Yeah, absolutely. But I like to preface it that it's not with judgment, but it's like a sense of knowing that that is not a thing that I could trust myself with. I think a lot of people can't be trusted with the idea of perfecting the self, right? Um,
Ooh.
where do we stop? Where when do we meet the point that moves forward increasingly in time? There is no way to achieve perfection, and I think that way is ruination, and that also probably is part of that, like Saturn in Aries meets Neptune in Aries. And we had talked a little bit too about how at the same time we have a baton passing between the south node in Virgo to the south node in Leo, and the idea of perfectionism and selfhood and self-perception and perception by others within that as well. It gets really messy, and I think it'll be really interesting to keep an eye on Hollywood, to see how that is happening on a culture and taste making level, and whatever starts there, we'll see funneled into influencer culture, and what we see funneled into influencer culture, we'll inevitably see in our own peer and social groups in some ways too. Are we good? Someone brought up, like Lucas, did you bring up Crimes of the Future? You can't do that to me at this point. I'll derail the whole thing to talk about how surgery is the new sex. Wow, I really silenced the Zoom for a second with that one.
I think we lost Meg. That's kind of I was just got
Oh,
slightly
did we lose
distracted.
Meg?
Potentially.
I was like, wow, I have alienated everyone by talking about Hollywood and pop culture again.
No. You could never. Yeah, I Lex is in the comments, and so is somebody else about gender affirming care and post op surgery. And I know Lex, you've talked to me about there being a re like acquaintance
Mm.
process to like renormalize after this like intense shift. And I think that's kind of an interesting Saturn and Aries thing. Is you're it's like giving like you're like actually this is my first day in a new body like, and it hasn't become normalized yet. I'm yeah, I just got my letter for top surgery, so I'm like Like, so for the person wondering if Saturn and Aries is a good time for gender affirming care, it might not be, but I'm with you. Like, you just gotta do shit when,
I think
like, the
every
best
time
time for
has to
something
be a
is
good time for gender affirming
the
care,
the
right?
best time to do something is when it gets done. That's something that
Yeah.
Ivy at Circle Thrice said once, and it's just been like fucking giving me. It's been stuck in my brain ever since. It's the
It's
best time to do a piece of magic is when it gets done.
yeah, Saturn and Aries in particular seems like the best time to be you.
Right, exactly. It's like, okay, it's time to like do the suffering that ends suffering. It's time to like undergo a process that like involves like first of all like fucking piercing my way through the biggest fucking tunnel of bureaucracy I've ever had to manage, like, and second, yeah, I mean that's really a big thing, and I think that thing that Meg said earlier about being like, okay, if you actually, even when faced with, not that I think, yeah, even when faced with a bunch of obstacles, it's like I still fucking want to do it. Like presenting me a hurdle didn't end it. Yeah. So cross. Hodier.
I think we're still waiting for Meg, right?
Yeah.
To journey back in. I saw something in the chat that I would love to comment on really quickly, and it was the AI related one. That,
Hey.
Hey,
oh my God. Yay. Okay, you're back. I was like,
hi. Neptune
Meg?
just evaporated me.
Yeah.
Bye.
You said one less face, actually.
I know that
Sorry,
the
please
melting
continue.
face thing was an omen. It was just you sliding off the screen.
um I wanted to, yeah, there was a comment here in AI, and I had someone field me a question in particular about like what things to look for with technology.
Mm.
And I listen, you saw me try and get on this Zoom and get things figured out. I'm not a person who understands technology. I love post-human stuff, but I can't like figure out my way around a computer. I really recommend Joshua Madera, Technomancer, if you're interested in technological magic, robotics, it's cybernetics, etc. But one of the things that I have been thinking a lot about is the famous like internet conspiracy theory slash maybe real the dead
Avril
internet
Lavigne?
theory. No. Oh my god. Okay, I have huge
Okay, never
feelings
mind.
about that one too. I have okay, sorry. Wow, we're really getting into some of my hyperfixations now. But
I was so
the
excited.
Avril Lavigne is dead and has been replaced one is like wow, what a the internet
Speaking of
is
things Speaking of things I'm not allowed to do, lest I lose my mind, it's like think about the Avril Lavigne replacement thing.
um so are people familiar with dead internet theory? I don't want to like
I'm
give
not.
us give
recap
us give
it
us the thing.
okay, so the concept is essentially that back in 2016, the internet was radically changed to be repopulated by bots and AI, and that ever since 2016, the internet has actually just been a giant graveyard where you're not interfacing with humans, you're interfacing mostly with robots, AI, chatbots, etc. Right? And I think that you hear something like that now, and you say yeah, duh, I've been on Instagram, right? Like, there's no way we can argue around that. But for 2016, if you think about this a decade ago, that was still a pretty fresh and new idea. Like a lot of the conversations around LLMs and other kind of models were further below the surface. I heard a lot of whisperings and stuff because I was in the Bay Area, which was a hub for all of it. But by and large, the idea of dead internet theory, which was is credited with a largely coming from a sort of obsolete message board thread from someone titled, I'm sure, Illuminati Pirate, I think was their username.
What a
And you can
name.
still Google all of this, or maybe, but should you, is the real question. Is that this was not just about getting the bots and the AI out there, but the idea that through this, large governmental agencies and bodies in power would be able to propagandize, manipulate, control the way we think, feel, interact, buy, vote, etc. Again, this started off as a conspiracy theory where people were like, and then again, you look around and you're like, well, our current president is like using AI to make like videos of him is soaring on an eagle or something, right? So like I am feeling into this theory, but
Oh,
10
that
years
leads me to my
ago,
point that everyone is spiritually 21 in Saturn and Aries. I'll come back to that.
yeah. Um 10 years ago was Saturn in Sagittarius, and we are in the opening trine kind of period now to that. And I have a feeling that we're going to see this sort of resurgence or this affirmation of dead internet theory. And then the solution that is offered to dead internet theory is like going outside and touching grass and interacting with humans, which I really hope you're all doing. But the
It's kind of
post-human witch in me is really curious about the ways in which we start interacting with like the ghosts of the internet, and how is there like a
whoa.
recourse of cyber necromancy that needs to be engaged in to like revivify vitality and aliveness into the internet, and like what does all of this have to do with Saturn and Aries and the idea of electrical synapses and sentience and individuality and autonomy, and are there ways in which like the human factor can take control back of the kind of restless ghost horde of the technological internet landscape? That's so those are
Yeah.
some of my kind of hypotheses for conversations of technology over the next couple of years.
Yeah, like if you like, well, I mean, what you just said made my head buzz. That's why I'm going to respond to it right now, as is my custom. But it's like if you summon something into the electrical synapsed body that is the like platform on which people are like marketing to you and like monitoring your conversations, etc., you can like force out the consciousness that like currently lives in it. And I just think that's a really compelling idea as like how to fight empire
Yeah.
is to just like literally summon something into the body as it's and like let it fight. And I think the internet is like an interesting place to do that versus say like the physical country, because the consequences seem less acute to doing
Yeah.
that.
Well, this is something Mark Fisher was talking a lot about, right? Pre co-opt by like the Nicklandian fucking accelerationists and everything. Is that all we have seen how that's played out? But like, there's a lot of lost
Boo.
futures on the internet. I speaking for myself, I got a lot of dead friends that I am following or followed by on Facebook or Instagram, etc. Right? We got emails for people that we can't like reach out to anymore. And where do we start? Is Saturn as guardian of the dead and the capital and necromancer of the chart in a lot of these ways. Aries again as an animating force, Saturn and Aries as a kind of devil you meet at the cemetery gate. If the cemetery gate is the internet, where do we go from there? What kind of offerings do we need to make? What kind of packs are we creating? What kind of recourse do we have in order to try and safely navigate a landscape of hungry ghosts and lost futures?
It's also, I mean, what a great fucking question. A.
Yeah.
Secondly, it makes me think of Cory Doctorow's Enshittification, as which was
Oh
on my
yes.
notes for this conversation,
Yeah.
as like a Saturn and Aries function. Which, if you don't know what that is, please just read his original article. If you search Cory Doctorow Enshittification, he'll do
It's
a
so
better
good.
job than me. But it's like functionally the hollowing out of all of the infrastructures that like currently make up capitalist culture. He uses Amazon as a great example, where
Yes.
it's like first it serves the consumer, then it serves the people who are selling to the consumers, and then it serves investors. And on the way to that third phase, you lose all utility while being like locked into the system. And the
I'm
same thing
trying to
happens
think.
to social media platforms.
I'm trying to think when you say hollowing out structures, I'm trying to think about like where does that happen to Saturn in the zodiac? Like where are
Ooh.
structures hollowed out? Because
Ooh,
I don't
yeah.
feel like Saturn, you might think like, oh, well, in fall or in detriment, that's where it gets hollow, but I don't think so. I think
My brain
Aries
said
fills.
Cancer or something.
Yeah, there's a filling that happens with the way that Aries wants to keep doing things that feels doesn't feel like thick to me, but it doesn't feel empty either. It feels like that lightning bolt that like that shot through like across a big field in a direction. It feels more like an arrow
I
that
feel like
like
it
is
makes it
still attached to
brittle.
your body and like strings you along toward it. You know what I mean? Like I don't think it's an Aries, but I wonder when that came out if it would have been in like Aquarius or something.
Is Saturn inherently a hollow structure?
Maybe.
The bones of the structure, but none of the things that fill it, maybe?
Yeah.
That's actually like part of my cosmology, and that like is like one of my uh yeah, like one of my teachers once told me that like Saturn and Venus together, like in his magical practice, were like the things that he would invoke to like create the universe, basically.
I think that's
And
Orphic as well, actually.
oh, really?
I'm pretty sure. Yeah. But anyway, keep going.
So it's like Saturn is the thing that holds it, and then Venus is the thing that is filled
Mhm.
with structure, and that's why
I
they're
think
boyfriends.
I think that I could be wrong. I get this from Kristen Mathis, and she has it right, and I might paraphrase wrong, but I'm pretty sure that in a different way, like Venus is so merging and like will just become like a basically like a black hole of nothingness because she's going to merge so hard, and Saturn is what holds her like enough to have there be something.
I like
Um,
that. Yeah,
yeah,
it's
it's a different frame. It's like the same two making the universe happen, but with a different kind of dynamic than you were describing, huh?
yeah. I feel like when we get this Venus opposition, it's gonna be like like the high femme walking with her like Rottweiler with a spiky colored necklace, like energy. There's like scary dog privilege.
Man, I'm looking at our notes and we have so much more. Where are we at? Do we want
Yeah, I feel
to
like we didn't
take
talk about any of the stuff that we said, but that is maybe okay.
that's the way it was always gonna go. I'm curious, do we want to
I
maybe
have
feel like take one more question
I
I
and
could
have
do I
one
could
more
do one. Oh, go ahead.
I have one more
I've
thought about this thema mundi, but that's all I have that I want to get out here.
okay.
Do you guys want to do something else
yeah,
first? Because I won't
what
forget
were
it.
you gonna say?
Oh, I was gonna say that I think I have in me like one or two maximum more questions before
Yeah,
my Taurus stellium is like dinner. I need to eat.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Okay, well, I can.
Let's do one, and
Okay.
I'm open to whatever you guys choose.
If you were excited about a Thema Mundi thing, Hawk, go for it.
Uh, I think I can just do it pretty quickly, but
Okay. Then we can grab a question.
it's that if in the thema mundi you have Cancer as the rising sign, and I think that that interestingly makes it so you get Saturn's fall and exaltation and domicile both on all on the angles of the birth chart of the universe. And so you're born in Cancer, and then 7 years of progress looks like Libra, and then another 7 years looks like Capricorn, and then you end up in Saturn and Aries with Saturn and Aries at age 21. So it's like obviously that's not where Saturn starts in the thema mundi, but I just think it's kind of interesting that it's like it's if you were to map the Saturn cycle over it, starting with Cancer, you end up with the closing Saturn square basically being the one that is keyed to Saturn in Aries, which happens at 21 years old. So you have the opening square when you're 7 and then the closing square when you're 21.
Oh, fascinating.
And this is the moment at which you finally have individuated from your family enough, but you haven't really like fully come into your person, identified a lot of things that are going fucking wrong, and like now you're like or that are like not what I want to be, or the things that I actually choose to claim for my birthright. And now you're gonna start that journey of traveling into the place where you do claim your power, at the Saturn return.
I'm just stuck on the fact that like one of my favorite things about astrology is when I bump into a really foundational sort of basic thing that I didn't remember or didn't know or never clocked. And I've never thought about the fact that Saturn has such strong opinions about every cardinal sign.
Yeah. Wow. Me neither.
Yeah,
I don't have anything smart to say about that. I'm just going to tell you that like you just gave me a more than the light bulb you meant to give me, and I
But
love
it's
when
these
that happens
turning
in
points,
astrology.
right? Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
it's
and
hard to
also like it
start.
speaks to that like
Starting's
structural.
hard.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's the death that is the life thing that
Yeah.
Sasha mentioned earlier, where
Mm-hmm,
it's like you're not a kid anymore. Like
mm-hmm.
you're a different thing now. Like that part of you is dead, and a new thing is now happening, and you're inexperienced at it. Like, and that's fucking okay. You have to embrace it and turn with the wheel for that to work.
Yeah, Saturn's good at the building and he's good at the destroying, but the beginning is really like that's I mean, in that way perhaps there's a pretty vital medicine that Aries might be able to provide as far as how sorry I almost went into performing it. The Prodigy's Firestarter.
Why didn't
Um
you?
Because
I
like,
know
God
that
You
forbid,
you
yeah.
you took it
God
from us,
forbid you give
Sasha.
us all a treat.
um can we all elect that as the official anthem of it? But I think Saturn will benefit from learning how to start some fires, right? As opposed to keeping them going or blowing them out. And I think that it's going to look messy. And I think I will. Both of my luminaries are in cardinal signs, right? It's a messy process over here for sure. Um, but man, there's nothing better than beginning. And I think that Saturn can learn from Aries about like how to begin and risking beginning, even if it's messy, even if you don't know where it's going to end. The point is not about where it's going to end, which I think is oftentimes Saturn's point. Like what's the inevitable conclusion of the thing? Saturn in Aries, it's like what's the inevitable beginning of the thing? And that might be in a lot of ways a really refreshing question for quote unquote the signs of the time, right?
Love that. Trust the process, TM.
Yeah, trust.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
I
trust
think
the
it's also
process.
like you have all the reasons in the world that you can list to not do the thing. Probably
Yes,
though, just do the thing,
Yeah,
which is
literally,
not
I,
that's
like
I
so
an
think
spot
I
on.
like wrote this literally in an Instagram post recently about when we were after we went to see stand up comedy. Where
Hmm.
I was like, "Oh yeah, we're always beginning. We're always because we watched. We this is a
yes.
great,
This is a
great. This is
great
we
way to.
got to do
This
it
is
because wasn't
yeah
Ray Romano like a Jupiter and Aries person or
yeah
something?
uh-huh.
We went to see stand-up comedy because we're like, wouldn't it be great to have a little hee hee ha ha in times such as these,
As
right?
one does.
Yeah, and the comics, are done, and then all of a sudden they're like, and we have a special guest, and it's Ray Romano, and if you're like a kind of a mid-grade
What?
millennial, such as at
As
least
we are.
the three of us really are, you probably remember Ray Romano, and Meg and I were like, what the fuck is actually happening? And I was like, wow, he never has to do this, but he got on stage and did a little set with a bunch of people that are just like, you know, rising or whatever, and he's this big celebrity who could just
Yeah.
never have to do anything like this ever again. And I was thinking about like why would he want to do that? And I think it's the pleasure of beginning, right?
Mm-hmm.
The pleasure of believing you can always begin. You haven't ever achieved something that is a height like whatever and this is the biggest lesson I usually get from my Mars in Aries is that like the point is not the satisfaction of achievement. The point is there's always something further, an ambition, a dream, a vision in the future that you are still nowhere near achieving, right? It doesn't matter what you're achieving along the way. It's about what's on the horizon. And I think that as far as Ray Romano was our Saturn and Aries omen, our augur, an
We should have told
older
him
gentleman uh, who came in
among the
and
youngins.
yeah, among the youngins,
Hello,
who's
fellow
just
kids.
beginning again from
Mm-hmm.
scratch. How
And
old
that's
is he? He's
something.
almost 70 years old. I saw he's born. I know that he's 78 or yeah, he's 68, and I know that because he was born the same year as Nick Cave.
And there's a
That's
torch passing.
Another bingo card.
Sasha Bingo. There's a
yeah,
torch
Sasha,
passing
Sasha Bingo.
thing that happens there too. Like he's helping to pass the torch in that moment,
Yep.
by giving that he's like conferring Ray Romano power onto those comedians by showing up at their thing, insofar as it's his to confer.
Someone
We
please make a Ray Romano Saturn and Aries omen related
Oh,
meme.
with a torch, like knighting somebody.
Yeah, absolutely. Whoever that guy was, the Australian one who was so funny.
oh my
The new
god.
our new
Yeah.
king.
Mm-hmm. He was great. I can't
Yeah,
think of his name right now though.
same.
But that was a fun surprise. And it's not like I'm like this huge Ray Romano fan or anything, but I had that little moment of like really what's happening. And it was cool to see him. He really like more or less acted like all the other
Yeah.
comics too. He wasn't like making a big thing about who he is or what he's done or anything like that. Like, it was really just like some stand-up he was trying out.
Yeah, he was trying to convince people in the audience to date his son so his son would have something to do. Real dad stuff.
Yeah.
I love how we went also in like 10 minutes from like hauntological internet landscapes to Ray Romano. I just think
That's what we bring to the table.
Yep.
and it's a beautiful thing, and it's just you're
definitely
not
part.
going to find it anywhere else. This is a unique meeting of the minds, you guys.
We should make it less unique and do it more often.
Yeah.
That's so true. If you
You
guys
guys
like
want us to do this more often in the
yeah,
chat? Tell us
if you
want
guys
to.
like this, one of the best things you can do is to tell us you liked it, I think.
Yeah.
Because that will motivate us to continue. So, if you're in a patron space with one of these guys or you're on social media, you could say something about it and that would make me very happy.
Yeah. Do we feel like this is a good natural conclusion?
This was good.
Yeah, I
It
honestly
always
love
feels
the Ray Romano thing as like the bookend to the dandelion omen.
Yeah.
Like that was really good.
It will be whenever anyone's like, do you think that's a good stopping place? I'm like, no, it's a horrible stopping place because we could keep going. And also, yes, it's a good stopping place.
So that's also the Saturn in Aries. It's like,
Yeah.
actually, it's bad, and we're gonna do it anyway.
Wait, maybe there's a little bit of like keep going, but also quit while you're ahead.
Can we do a quick little like round of where you can find each of us and what we'd most like you to appreciate about our work in the future if you were into this?
Very,
Wow.
How
official and grown up of you.
Subscribe, and follow.
Hit that motherfucking like button, smash that subscribe button. I am trying to scale up the YouTube, so if you enjoyed hanging out with me here and you want to meet other ones of my friends in the future and these friends again, please subscribe to this channel. I have more things, but one of you go.
I have to cough, so Sasha, go.
Okay, I'm gonna put it in. Oh my God, Ari!
Wow.
Prince of Dreams, incredible.
Truly
has
a Prince
dropped,
of Dreams.
our websites.
Whoa, look at that!
Oh my God, I feel so professional.
Oh my God, these emojis are great, also, Hawk.
Yeah,
thank you.
I
think we picked these in the last one that we did.
Feeling extremely sane. Yeah, and I mean, all of us, I think, are like literally basically our names on Instagram. And we all have Patreons and Substacks. And if you follow us to any of the one things, including websites, I'm sure it'll like just link you to the other things about us as well. All of us, I think, see clients and have communities, and all of us can be found booping and beeping around.
Yeah.
And with podcasts and others. Okay, I'm running out of steam. Okay.
It is time.
In the world,
both of these people do really good consultations, and you should check them out. I host an event in the Pacific Northwest in the summer that you should all come to if you like this kind of thing. It's called North Star, northstarcampout.org.
Yeah, maybe one year
I'll
do it at the same time as the other conference I do, and that would, be
yeah,
cool.
Unfortunately, it's at the exact same time as Salem Witch Fest, so womp womp. But it is going to be during the Venus and Saturn in Aries opposition, not exactly tight, but that's the whole sign opposition is going to be happening. So if you want to hear about that, if you want to experientially experience that sexy little opposition we talked about,
a Rottweiler with a spiked necklace to
no pets, but if you want to bring your edging partner with no, don't. It's not exactly that kind of event, but it could be.
They're invited. As far as I know. Thing. Yeah.
Bring your own thing, and if it's a guy with walking around on a leash, that's fine.
I saw before someone say Pillion 2026, and this is like another Pillion, official sponsor of the Saturn and Aries Roundtable.
Someone asked for my URL. Let's do that. What's Pillion?
The film, the Alexander Skarsgård and Dudley Dursley film. I don't remember his name. Harry. Bring Ray Romano. Bring Ray Romano's son. Please.
Bring Ray Romano's son.
He said he'd pay for the wedding.
Oh my God. Yeah, he did say he'd pay for the wedding. He promised. We'll hold him to it.
Yeah, it's
Hawk,
worth it.
are you taking mentees? Are you doing client stuff right now? I forget.
My books were closed for some time. I got
Hot
voluntold to
standing.
I got voluntold to close them by my spirits, but as of today, they were like, you should open them again. Then I didn't do it before this live stream. So sign up for my mailing list to find out about that. But I do long-term mentorships, like for people who are magic, like in the magic astrology overlap. And I do one-off consultations too, like for like using astrology to figure out how to direct your magical practice. That's my one-line summary. Will
If
you
you
guys
want,
give me one-line summaries about what you guys do in consult spaces?
I was just gonna say, if you want to experience the world through the way that like Hawk metabolizes gnosis, a la the dandelion
And the
related,
car.
yeah, yeah, then Hawk is the person for you with
I'm a
that,
big
because
omen
that
guy.
shit's
I'll
unreal.
speak to Sasha because it's easier to talk about other people.
There
I
you go.
Sasha's readings are you can't find them anywhere else ever. They're completely unique because she's every single session is like fully innovated from her mass of multidisciplinary stuff. And it's I've had two readings with Sasha, one of which before we were friends, and it was truly life changing. Like people just say that shit, but it like maybe like a little warning label, your life will change.
It's the Saturn and Aries thing.
Warning label, maybe a threat. You're going to have your spiritual stuff catalyzed in some way. And if you want to know more about that, Sasha just did a haunted houses reading style podcast with Kira Ryberg on Threads of Fate, which is excellent, and it just came out. And that will give you a really good sense of at least one of the very popular readings that is available. So
Yes. You remembered to plug the pod.
plug the pod, plug city.
And I will introduce Meg then. Meg is it like calls themselves a fifth house specialist, but they really are someone who lives there. They offer a lot of other amazing things, and they're number one reference for me as far as fixed star readings at this point. But I think that in a time of unrelenting torture and pain surrounding us, the points of pleasure, fecundity, creativity, and joy become all the more important. And Meg is really, really incredible at exploring those things. My Mars is in the fifth house. I did a fifth house reading with Meg, and I like wept. I fell in love with my Mars. I realized that a lot of things about myself that I had been self-rejecting were some of my like great and beautiful virtues as a result of this reading. And I think when we're talking about uh, how hard things can help us understand the best things, Meg is the best person for that, because they have and you're public about this, so I don't feel bad saying it.
No,
You've got your Saturn in the fifth house, so you've had
yeah.
to find your way through those places. You've had to earn the way you occupy them. So if you're trying to find ways to occupy earning your way, like working your way toward pleasure, which I think all of us will be in this quote unquote economy, Meg's your person.
Thanks,
Hell
Sasha.
yeah.
Okay.
We did it. Great job, everyone.
We did
Plug
it.
City.
We did guys, we did a marketing. We did it.
We did it.
Thank
We
fucking
did a
God.
great job, and we didn't want to die doing it. Well,
Please
a little
clap.
bit. Yeah, yeah. I'll
Thank
clap. I'll clap for us.
So this is, I think this is going to be online after this, so it'll just be on YouTube and wherever else people want to put it. So that'll be a thing for you to reference in the future if you ever want to come back to this or show a buddy.
Also, thanks for having such an active chat.
I know, thank you so much.
I wasn't able to read it because I am too easily overstimulated, but like just occasionally like flipping over to it, it's just so nice to see you all like chatting with each other and like responding. And it's just nice to feel like even though this is like technically a one-way thing, it's not actually, and like having you be here is just really, really nice.
Absolutely.
I also really loved that. Thanks for being here, guys.
Yeah, it was great. And for my folks that didn't get their questions answered, because we think we only got to like 3 out of, I think, the 15 or whatever that were fielded, I promise I will answer yours either in voice notes or otherwise.
You're so generous with your patrons.
I would like to be more, and I will have more time to do so soon. So hopefully that will only increase.
Let's go. Yeah. Sasha's patron
Okay, let's
Discord
get
is
this
definitely the place
Taurus.
to be.
Let's get this Taurus some food, huh?
Let's get this Taurus to dinner.
Thank you. What true friends. Okay. Bye, everyone.
No, it's very helpful for us too. Thank you. Okay, I'm ending the stream. Goodbye.